1952. A small bedroom in Ohio. A man stands in front of a narrow mirror. Not rich, not famous, a hardware store clerk making $62 a week. He buttons his shirt and smooths his trousers, and when he walks out the door, he looks like $1 million. That didn't happen by accident. The 1950s man did not match everything. That was the point. A textured sport coat in herringbone, tweed, or houndstooth was paired with smoother trousers. A patterned top called for a plain bottom. A bold tie sat against a quiet shirt. The outfit had tension in it, and the tension was the style. Contrast made the eye move. Matching made the eye stop. Men who dressed well in this era understood that the goal was visual interest, not uniformity. Rule 12. The white t-shirt was not underwear anymore. It started as underwear, literally. It was the plain white undershirt worn beneath work clothes. Then Marlon Brando wore one in a streetcar named Desire in 1951. James Dean wore one in Rebel Without a Cause in 1955. Two men, two films, and a piece of cotton that cost under $1 became a cultural symbol that is still going strong 70 years later. The lesson was not about the shirt. It was about fit and attitude. Brando's shirt fit. Dean's shirt fit. That was the whole trick. These first two rules are the exact opposites of Rule 9. Rule 11. The silhouette came first. Clean lines replaced the heavier, boxier silhouette of the 1940s. Natural shoulders, not padded. Shorter jackets that hit at the seat. Higher waists. Slimmer trousers that broke cleanly at the shoe. The effect was a body that looked taller, longer, and more composed. No complicated patterns were needed. No expensive fabric was required. A well-cut suit from a department store did what $2,000 of poorly fitted designer clothing cannot do today. The silhouette did the work. Rule 10. Fit mattered more than the label. There was no streetwear flex in 1950s menswear. There was no brand name printed across the chest. A man's clothing was judged by how it sat on his body, not who made it. Shoulders hit at the right point. Sleeves broke just past the wrist bone. Trousers did not pool at the ankle. This was not about wealth. A Sears catalog suit, properly tailored, looked better on a man who knew his measurements than a bespoke jacket on a man who did not. Effite was the great equalizer. Rule 9. The gray flannel suit was a uniform. A warning. By the mid-1950s, the gray flannel suit had become so common in corporate America that it became shorthand for something. Conformity. The organization man. The interchangeable executive. Sloan Wilson wrote a novel about it in 1955. Advertisers sold it, sociologists studied it, and men wore it 5 days a week without question. It was reliable. It was safe. It was also, quietly, a symbol of everything the next generation would eventually rebel against. The suit worked. What it meant was the problem, but not as big of a problem as Rule 4. Rule 8. The Ivy League look made casual respectable. The universities along the Northeastern Corridor, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, developed a look in the post-war years that would quietly restructure menswear forever. Oxford shirts, sport coats with natural shoulders, chinos, penny loafers, crew neck sweaters, nothing flashy, nothing forced. The message was that a man could be relaxed and still be put together, that he did not need a tie to look serious. That ease was its own kind of elegance. The blueprint for what we now call smart casual was drawn in those classrooms and worn on those lawns decades before anyone gave it a name. Rule 7. The tie was not decoration, it was punctuation. Narrow to medium width, restrained patterns, subtle stripes, small repeating figures, quiet solids. The tie finished the sentence a suit or dress shirt started. It was not meant to be the loudest thing in the room. Collars were sized to frame the knot properly, not too tight, not too loose. The dimple below the knot was pressed in with 2 fingers before leaving the house. These were small things. They were also the things people noticed. Rule 6. Men wore shorts with knee-high socks and did not apologize. Particularly for casual outings, athletic activities, or summer weekends, the standard pairing was shorts, often tailored, sitting at or just above the knee, with knee-high or calf-length socks, and clean leather shoes or canvas sneakers. It looked deliberate because it was. There was no slouch in it. Even in leisure, there was a standard. A man relaxing on a Saturday did not look like he had given up. He looked like a man who had decided to relax. Rule 5. Hollywood dressed the whole country. What Cary Grant wore to a film premiere on a Friday was in the window at department stores across America by the following month. What Gregory Peck wore in a studio publicity photograph became the look men requested from tailors in cities they would never visit. Hollywood and Madison Avenue moved together in the 1950s in a way that had not happened before. The result was a nation of men who shared a visual vocabulary, who understood without being told what dressed well looked like. The aspiration was democratized. You did not need to be Cary Grant. You needed to dress like a man who knew what Cary Grant knew. Rule 4. The hat was on its way out, and men could feel it. Hats were still common in the early 1950s. Fedoras, pork pies, the occasional Homburg. But something had shifted. Young men were going hatless in ways that older men found unsettling. John F. Kennedy famously did not wear a hat to his 1961 inauguration, and many would point to that moment as the final blow. But the decline had already been underway for a decade. The 1950s sit at the hinge point, the last era when a hat was normal, and the first era when going without one was a statement. Men who wore hats in 1958 were not behind the times. They were the last chapter. These last 3 rules from the 1950s you have probably never heard of. Rule 3. Shoes were polished, always. Brown or black, Oxford or loafer, leather-soled or rubber, it did not matter. What mattered was condition. Scuffed shoes told a story about a man, and the story was not flattering. Polish sat on the dresser. A cloth or brush was nearby. Before a man left the house for anything that mattered, he looked at his shoes. This was not vanity. It was the understanding that the lowest point of the outfit was where people's eyes eventually landed, and that a man who let that slip had let himself slip. Rule 2. Grooming was part of the outfit. Hair was combed, parted, and held. Not to make a statement, but to be neat. A barbershop visit every 2 to 3 weeks. A straight razor or a safety razor at home every morning. Clean nails, clean collar. A man did not present himself to the world incomplete. The grooming was not separate from the dressing. It was the last step of it. Rule 1. The sport coat carried the week. The single most versatile garment in a man's wardrobe in the 1950s was not a suit. It was the sport coat. It went to dinner. It went to church. It went to a school function, a business lunch, or a Saturday afternoon outing with the right shirt underneath. A well-chosen sport coat, such as a herringbone, a Glen plaid, or a solid in navy or camel, did the work of 3 suits if a man knew how to use it. Pair it with smooth wool trousers. Pair it with pressed chinos. Change the shirt and the shoes, and a man had 3 different outfits from a single garment. If you want to see more videos about the 1950s, subscribe.